Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just talked about the two biggest games of the weekend: Alabama at Missouri. We have Indiana at Oregon. I'm going to take Alabama. I'm going to take Oregon by a hair in really both those games. I think they're going to come down to the wire. I think Oregon makes it look a little bit better, but I think both those games are going to be as fun as can be. And both those other teams, Indiana and Missouri, are going to earn a little bit more respect, even in losses. And now we got some conference battles that are going to be really, really fun to watch. And we'll start with the other ranked matchup that's going on in the Big Ten this upcoming weekend. That is number 1 Ohio State at number 17 Illinois. This is one a lot of people are watching pretty closely. And it's not necessarily to say Illinois has a great chance to win this game, all due respect to the Illini, but I think there's an opening here where maybe Ohio State looks a little bit more mortal than they have in the first couple of weeks. Maybe Ohio State shows a couple more holes than they have in the first couple of weeks, and we look up at the end of it, and Illinois kept this one close. I don't necessarily think Illinois is going to be able to win this one. We'll get to my official pick here in a second, but Luke Altmaier has been playing as good a football as any quarterback in the country. If you've been watching closely, this guy's been absolutely dealing. This offense has been as explosive as you're going to find in the entire country, especially in the Big Ten. But I think this is one of those games where you're going to need Luke Altmaier to play perfect. Pretty much perfect at the very least. I think this Ohio State front end is absolutely nightmare fuel. I think there's going to be a couple of moments in this game where he's going to either have to put it in his pocket and take a sack or throw the ball away or do something that isn't quite as flashy as you'd like it to be. But against this Ohio State defense, it might very well be a win. I think there's an opening here where you're going to have to find plays downfield. If you can't, I don't know how well you're going to hold up against this defense. I think it's going to be a nightmare for you all afternoon if you're not able to find a couple big plays, especially early in this game. But the big time question here is, can the Illinois defense hold up even a little bit? They obviously didn't against Indiana. They kind of got rolled in that football game, and now you play a team that just continues to slowly open this offense up. I think they're going to do it quite a bit in this one. I think Julian Sain has the game that puts him on the map just a little bit. I think he rips the ball around, and I think Ohio State puts up 31. I think they win 31-14 in this football game. I worry about the Illinois offense or defense, excuse me, and I think there's a moment here where Ohio State just sits back and says, we have a little bit of opening. There's a moment to get Julian Sain confident. There's a moment to kind of thrust him into the top of the conversation around quarterbacks in college football. I think they take that chance, and I think Julian Sain rises to the occasion. I think Ohio State rolls in this one and continues to prove that they're the top team in the country. The Red River Shootout, the game that a lot of people are confused about throughout this week for a number of different reasons, mainly the line of this game. Now, it has come all the way down to Oklahoma being favored by 1.5. It started at Texas favored by 3.5, I believe, at the opening of the week, has kind of made its way down and across that line, all the way to Oklahoma being favored. And it sounds like John Mateer is going to be back. It is all kind of up in the air. Obviously, Brent Venables isn't going to tell you anything before they officially kick off. But at the end of the day, I think he's going to be able to go. I don't know what that looks like. And that's the big time question here. What does he look like in this football game? Because as bad as Texas has been on the offensive side of the ball and as poor as that defense did play last week, this Oklahoma team doesn't have a Jaden Ball. They don't have a guy that can make three guys miss in the backfield and then find his way for 15 yards. They also don't have the offensive line that Florida had. So I do think there's an opening here where Texas can slow down the run game for Oklahoma, put a lot of the onus on Michael Hawkins or an injured John Mateer, and then you're looking at an opening here. You're looking at a way to win this game defensively in some respects. And now the other talking point that is going to be kind of beaten to death in the pregame show for good reason in some respects is the Texas offensive line is a problem. They gave up 35 pressures to Florida last week. Florida had 35 pressures in their first 4 games. So it's a problem. There's no two ways about that. There is something going on with that offensive line that they have to figure out. They have to get Arch Manning comfortable. I talked about it on Tuesday. I think there's a lot of energy being pushed his direction because of the last name, and I totally get that. He is far from the biggest issue with that offense. I can tell you that right now, and obviously the Athletic does the reporting they're going to do, I suppose. But at the end of the day, this kid is not playing nearly as bad as he is getting credit for. Here's the reality. If the offensive line for Texas plays at the level they did last week, I don't know if this is going to get over 10 points for the Texas offense. I think it's going to get really ugly. I think Arch Manning might not even finish this game because the defensive line for Oklahoma is as nasty as you're going to find in the entire country. You have R. Mason Thomas. You have David Stone. You have Jaden Jackson. It's going to be a nightmare if you can't find a way to put your quarterback in winning situations, put your offensive line in winning situations, because they're not going to be a dominant group. They're not going to totally hold up against this Oklahoma defensive line. Can you do enough to get the ball out of Arch Manning's hands fast, get the ball to your playmakers in, hope they can finally make plays? They haven't really all year, but maybe you find an opening in this game. Maybe they make a couple of plays and the juices get flowing for this football team. Now, I don't think it's going to be an offensive clinic by either of these squads, really, but I think there's an opening for both of them to make a couple of plays and that be the difference in this game. But one of the bigger things is John Mechir. We talked about how close to 100% he's going to be. The big reason that matters is I don't know if Oklahoma is able to run the ball without him or without their quarterback in general. So the question is he close to 100%? Do they feel confident running him the amount they ran him against Michigan, the amount they ran him against Auburn? I'd be a little bit surprised. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. Is Oklahoma's offensive line just put in kind of a tough spot because they don't have the quarterback run to go along with everything else? Or is John Mechir at 80% and they don't feel confident throwing them out there because they think they need the quarterback run? It's all going to be up for debate. Now, I would say an 80% John Mechir is a whole lot better than 100% Michael Hawkins, with all due respect, but I do think this one's going to be really interesting. There is not a game at Red River that's not a little bit weird. Now, it could be weird for a number of different reasons. It could be Texas dominating. It could be Oklahoma dominating. It could be a really ugly game, and it comes down to a couple of plays defensively or offensively. It's going to get weird. I can almost promise you that. I can't trust the Texas offensive line against this Oklahoma defensive line. I just can't do it. I'm going to take Oklahoma to win this one 20-13. I don't think it looks pretty on either offensive side, regardless of the quarterback that Oklahoma has. I don't think it's going to look all that pretty from either offense, but I'm not picking for that offensive line over at Texas right now. It's been absolutely terrible, and this Oklahoma defensive line is very well maybe the best in the country. So I'm going to take Oklahoma to win this one 20-13, and a lot of questions to be asked around Texas on Monday or Sunday morning. This is a huge one. The Deep South's oldest rivalry, number 10 Georgia on the road at Auburn. Georgia favored by 3.5, over under at 46.5. It's a night kickoff in Jordan-Hare, and I think it's going to get really, really interesting because Georgia walks into Auburn this week. They get Ole Miss coming up next week, and Hugh Freeze needs this one. If Hugh Freeze loses this game, I think it's kind of a ticking clock. I think there is going to be a change made there at some point this season. The question is it mid-season? Is it at the end of the season? One thing I can promise you is if he does fall, if he loses this game and Hugh Freeze is out of there quickly, this will be one of the biggest rosters to talk about when it comes portal time. I can absolutely promise you that. With the playmakers they have on the outside, with even the quarterback they have, although I don't think he's getting another SEC offer, I think there's a lot of different players on this football team that could find their way somewhere else in the SEC, outside of the SEC next year, if they did fall in this game, or if they were able to find a way to kind of salvage this. Then maybe Auburn's turning the corner at the end of the season that we did not expect right now. But this is going to be really interesting because the Georgia pass rush has not been very good. They have not gotten after quarterbacks. That's why Ty Simpson kind of tore them up on third down. Not to say Jackson Arnold's going to do what Ty Simpson did by any means. Those wide receivers can make life miserable for you in a hurry. They can make a number of plays on the outside, and if Jackson Arnold puts it close to Cam Coleman, he's going to go up and make a play. I think this Georgia defense just needs to find a way to get after him. Obviously, they're going to run the quarterback. That's going to be a big-time question. The way they handled Georgia Tech last year was not all that great. Maybe they can tap into some of that for Auburn, but I think this is one of those games that's going to be huge. I think there's so many narratives that probably aren't being talked about too much going into this one. I think Hugh Freeze is really kind of back up against the wall, and I think they're going to fight. I think it's going to be a really, really tough defensive battle. I think Auburn's going to make a couple of big plays down the field. I just got to trust Georgia here. I think Kirby wants to kind of put the nail in the coffin for this Auburn season in some respects. I think Georgia wins this one 24-21. I think they make a field goal to win it. I don't think it's pretty at all. I think Georgia walks away feeling like they might have gotten away with one, but I'm not going to trust Auburn in close games, and I think this is going to be a close game. So I'm going to take Georgia to win it by 3. I think it's going to be really fun, but Georgia finds a way to win, and Auburn is probably looking for a new head coach here pretty soon. Number 15, Michigan at not number USC, outside the top 25 for this one, but favored in this matchup. Favored by 2.5, over under at 57.5. This is another night kickoff. This one's huge in so many different ways. Michigan obviously lost that game earlier in the year to Oklahoma, but both these teams are in a position where they win this one. they're looking at the playoff in a really, really real light. Now, USC has a much tougher slate towards the end of the season than Michigan does. Obviously, Michigan gets Ohio State at the end of the year, but USC gets Notre Dame next week. They get Oregon later in the year. They get Washington as well. It is going to be a fight for USC to find their way into the CFP. If they're going to do it, they got to find a way to win this one, plain and simple. And USC's ability to keep Jaden Maiava upright is probably going to be the difference in this one. Michigan's ability to get after them is going to be a huge, huge test, something they haven't really faced. Now, Gabe Jackas got after him a little bit in that Illinois game a couple of weeks ago, no doubt about it. They also gave up 4.9 yards per carry in that game. So the question becomes, can Michigan run the ball, and can they kind of slow down this passing attack for USC? That comes down to Jayshon Barham and Derek Moore, two incredible edge rushers / linebackers, depending on the way you want to look at it, and it is going to be an absolute fight between these two groups. The question I have here is that 9 yards per carry against Illinois, that can turn into 8 yards per carry against Michigan, because Justice Haynes can take 175 yards in a second. Now, is he going to be as bruising as Khalil Mullings was last year? I'd be surprised in some respects, but he can hit home runs. There's no doubt about that, and he can do it multiple times in a game. I don't think USC finds a way to get this one done. I think it's going to be really fun. I think they go back and forth. I think some people walk out of this one showing or realizing just how special Bryce Underwood is. I think he's going to make a number of plays in this game, but I think it comes down to that running game. I think Justice Haynes is just going to be too much for this USC group. I think they get closer. I think they continue to show that they are inching closer to that ultimate goal, but continue to fall just a little bit short against these more physical teams. South Carolina at number 11, LSU. This is a moment for South Carolina. There's no doubt about that. LSU favored by 9.5 in this game, over under at 43.5, which shows you kind of the state of both these offenses. But at the end of the day, this might be the one that South Carolina had circled the most coming into the season, because one kind of got stolen from them last year. If you watch that game, you understand what I'm talking about. That was a bad call. There's no doubt about that. You lose that game by 3, you probably feel like you probably should have won it by 10 with that pick six at the very end of the game that was called back. But at the end of the day, this is a huge one. There's so many different things that can go wrong for South Carolina the rest of the season, mainly because the rest of their SEC schedule is an absolute nightmare. If you haven't seen it, it's 5 straight top 11 matchups. I think about 3 or 4 of those are in the top 5. It's an absolute nightmare for South Carolina the rest of the way. They get LSU, OU, Bama, Ole Miss, A&M. Obviously, some of those can change, but it's going to be really, really tough. And a win this weekend would help a ton. If they go 0-5, I don't think the sky is falling. I don't think Shane Beamer's getting fired. I do think it's a less than ideal season when you're coming in with maybe the most talented quarterback you've had in a very, very long time. Now, he's got to stay on the field, of course, but at the end of the day, this is going to be a very disappointing season. If those games do not go their way, there's an opening here for this one to go your way. LSU's coming off a bye. How healthy is Garrett Nussmeier is the big time question here, because that offense has not gotten going. The offensive line has really struggled. They haven't been able to run the football, and I don't think Garrett Nussmeier being healthy fixes all those problems. I do think he gives you more an opening, and I think he has the ability to kind of operate even in kind of a weird pocket if he's officially let's say 90%. Let's not even say 100%, because I think that's kind of out of the question this year, but let's say he's closer to 100%. He can make enough plays in this game. There's no doubt about that. They have 4 straight top 20 matchups where they get Vandy, A&M, Bama right after this one. It's going to be really, really tough to deal with this game. There's no doubt about that. I think it's going to be really, really fun, actually. I think there's going to be 2 quarterbacks that probably play the best they've played this season. I think they're a little bit healthier than they have been, and I think those offenses are just going to find a little bit of a groove. I don't think it's going to be all that pretty the entire way, but at the end of the day, I think Garrett Nussmeier makes enough plays here. I think LSU wins this one 30-20. I think it's a fun battle. There's no doubt about that. I think Garrett Nussmeier looks the part in this game, and people kind of throw LSU into that Tennessee, into that, let's say, Ole Miss, into that conversation of those teams that could very well be one of those other teams in the SEC. I think we're still trying to figure out who those 4 teams are going to be. I think LSU kind of inserts themselves back into that conversation this weekend with a good win against South Carolina. I think it's going to look really nice, and I think that offense is going to come alive just a little bit. Arizona State on the road at Utah. Utah, not a ranked team, although I probably think they should be. I'll release my top 25 probably later today, but Utah minus 5.5, over under at 48.5. It's a 10:15 kickoff, so get ready to stay up late for this one because it's going to be really, really fun, and it's a massive one in the Big 12. I think people have kind of forgotten about the Big 12 and as a entity in some respects because of how good Texas Tech has been. They've kind of written off every other matchup that doesn't include Texas Tech. I think this is a huge one, and I think this could very well decide who plays Texas Tech in Arlington. And as of this very moment, I think that game could just very well be for a spot in the CFP with the team that loses going home. So it's going to be a huge moment for one of these football teams. Can Arizona State run the football? Is the biggest question I have going into this one. Raleek Brown has been top 10 running back in the country probably thus far this year, but at the end of the day, you're going to go up against a group that is really, really nasty up front, that has a ton of dudes. Obviously, they're second, I think, in defensive lines to Texas Tech in this conference, but at the end of the day, it is going to be a huge, huge challenge for Arizona State. They invite Texas Tech into town next week, and if you put this game on Sam Leavitt's shoulders, he hasn't necessarily inspired confidence. He's played much better football the last couple of weeks, no doubt about that, but you put it all on his shoulders the way you did against a Mississippi State until late in that football game. You're going to have a tough time. I can almost promise you that. Both teams coming off a bye, both really strong offenses that kind of do it in a little bit different ways, but have that explosive ability with Jordan Tyson on one side, obviously an elite player. Ryan Davis playing really good football on the outside for Utah. I think Utah can do all the stuff that Mississippi State did, but they can also stop the run. I think it's going to be really, really tough for Arizona State to be able to get the run going the way that they want to in this game. I think Sam Leavitt makes a couple of mistakes, and Utah gets a huge one, 24-17. I think they pull this one off. They put themselves in a really good position to possibly rematch with Texas Tech at the end of the year in Arlington, and they get a huge one here. I think it's going to be a fun battle, really kind of back and forth offensive and defensive plays in this game, but I think Utah makes enough plays defensively. I think they win this one 24-17, a huge one for the Utes. But it's going to be a really fun weekend. All those games that I just said very well could go the other direction. They are all on the table. Even Red River, as many people will be picking Oklahoma, and for good reason, will be picking Oklahoma. I think there is an opening there where maybe things just get a little bit weird in Dallas, as they have a number of time before. So we will talk about that as it unfolds, of course, but let's get into a little bit of a whip around after this break. We'll talk about the Belichick drama over there at UNC. We'll talk about South Florida, North Texas tomorrow night, which is going to be massive, and a number of other games that we just haven't had a chance to get to right after this.